That dead guy. That dead guy. That dead guy. Welcome back to That Dad Guy. It is November the 27th, 2025, and it is 11 degrees and a little overcast. That's the weather here, and it's amazing that it's still that temperature at this time of year. Today, we are getting back into what's in my father's binder. This is his stamp binder from the Americas, everything but Canada and the US. And I was reminded that the audience is waiting. That is motivation to get a video out. So I am doing just that. Thank you, Olia. Well, make sure you like, you subscribe, you leave positive comments, you share with other people, you put the notification bell on, and you hype if you have that ability. Well, today, we're getting into the next country. And in this binder, I can tell you, he's only got one stamp. Luckily for my binder, I've got a bunch more, so I will have stamps to show you from this country. But before I get into that, I want to talk about colonialism just a little bit. Now, when we think of colonialism, we might think of the Spanish Empire, the French Empire, the British Empire, maybe even the Portuguese Empire. And there were colonialism before. I mean, maybe you're thinking of American colonialism now. Maybe you're thinking of the Roman Empire and going further back, or Chinese dynasties. And there's all sorts of countries that expanded their territories to become greater and a larger. Maybe I shouldn't use the word greater. That gives a connotation that it was a good thing. Now, not necessarily a good thing. But sometimes we overlook this nation when we think of colonialism, and that's the Netherlands, the Dutch Empire. It did exist, right? Yeah, it happened. The Dutch Republic, which was part of the Spanish Netherlands Revolt of 1579. So Spain had expanded and taken over lots of areas, and the Netherlands broke free from that. Its 7 provinces established itself in 1581. And from that, they looked for a little bit of different perspective when they did colonialism, at first anyways. They looked at creating outposts around the world in order to increase their trade, which helped things at home. That's what they were doing. Rather than creating territories and expanding territory-wise, they were creating outposts. They also had companies that helped facilitate, rather than their military always facilitating where they were. They had the Dutch East India Company, the Dutch West India Company, and they had almost a monopoly on Asian spices and the silks that were coming from the West or the East, depending where you are. But their empire grew and grew and grew. So the income fueled wars, not territories. They were also more tolerant to different religions and ideas, which was great for them at home. They had the freedom of thought for their residents. Artists flourished, like Rembrandt and Vermeer. They also had trade that pushed their sciences and armed forces to the top of the world as far as what they were producing. They ran this empire up until 1806, when Louis Bonaparte went to the Dutch throne. Now, if the last name sounds familiar, that's because he's the younger brother of France's Napoleon Bonaparte, and he was on the throne from 1806 to 1810, and then 1810 to 1815, it just became part of the French Empire, and then in 1850, it became the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and the Kingdom of the Netherlands, although it changed the different territories and things, it ran until 1975. At the Dutch Empire's height, in about 1652, it had territories or outposts in Eastern North America, the Caribbean, South America, Suriname and Brazil, Western and Southern Africa, India, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Japan, Taiwan, Australia, New Zealand, and Tasmania. So they were all over the place. But the one that I want to focus on today, because we've been looking at the Americas, is Suriname. Suriname's pretty unique. It is a 90% rainforest. Its borders are to the north, the Atlantic Ocean, to the east, French Guiana, to the west, Guyana, or English Guyana at one point in time, and to the south is Brazil. So they were kind of wedged in amongst this. It's the smallest country in South America by population and by territory. It's got a population of 612,000 people, and half of those, or more than half of those, are in the capital of Paramaribo. The main language is Dutch, and in 1954, it became a country within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. In 1975, it got its independence, but we'll talk about how it got there. It was biggest export was sugar, and to do that, they needed plantations, and to do that, they needed slaves. So they brought in over 300,000 African slaves between 1600 and 1800, and in 1863, slavery was abolished. So then they needed to bring in indentured servants to work the plantations, which came through the East India Company, excuse me. So they were bringing in Chinese and Indian workers to work these plantations. It's the only independent state outside of Europe where Dutch is the official and predominant language. 60% of the population speaks Dutch as its first language. It also has economic resources in bauxite, gold, petroleum, and then of course agriculture, which we have sugar cane coming out of there, and a number of other products too. Let's go back. So when Suriname, which is right there at the top of South Africa, it was first not created. There were Aboriginal people that were there first, but like the Arawaks. But the English did come along, and they did set up outposts and started some things. They had a couple places. One of them was called Suriname. In the 17th century, Jews from the expulsion of Spain and Portugal found their way to Suriname as well, because there was a freedom of religion there in 1665, which allowed them to own sugar plantations and have a private military as well to protect their interests. That was all allowed for them at the time. In 1667, though, Suriname became Dutch as the Treaty of Breda. So between the wars that were going on between the Netherlands and England, this treaty came in and said, okay, the Netherlands would like to keep Suriname, and they were willing to exchange it for New Amsterdam, which was the main city from New Netherlands in eastern North America. New Amsterdam, you might know it better as New York City. So Suriname was traded for New York City to the English. Who got the better trade? I don't know in the end, but we'll see. If we jump ahead to the Second World War, because during that period of time, the Netherlands were running it as a place to get trade. We're getting minerals and agricultural products from it. In 1941, during the Second World War, the Netherlands was under occupation by the German forces, but their government was still running. So where their government went, it went to Suriname, and so the Netherlands government was based out of Suriname during that period of time, and running any sort of strategic planning they needed during the Second World War. In 1954, they became an independent nation within the Netherlands. So they were still part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, but they had independence. They just didn't have autonomy over their own foreign affairs. That didn't happen until 1975. But in 1975, a large portion of the population, actually a third of the population, immigrated back to the Netherlands because they feared what this country would become without the Netherlands running it, basically. And to some degree, they were right. There was corruption in the government. In 1986, they had a civil war between the Maroons, which was a combination of people that were half English and half African slaves, the people that were descendants of them. They did an uprising, and another 10,000 of those people, the Maroons, fled to French Guiana because of civil wars and the way things were going. But let's go on a positive note. In 1988, in the Seoul, Korea Summer Olympics, Anthony Nesty won gold for Suriname the first Olympic medal in the 100-meter butterfly. So in the pool, they took home gold. They got their first Olympic medal. And now I want to show you the postage stamps that we've collected. I'm going to start with the easiest one. Oh, this book. This is the whole reason we are doing these videos, and it's my father's collection. So on this page, we've seen this page before because we've looked at stamps from St. Kitts, from St. Lucia. But in amongst all these stamps is this one. The one from Suriname. The only one that my father had. I tried to avoid it when showing them in the past, but he had put it on the same page. Because that was the only one he had. Why create a single page for one stamp? Well, I've gone and created this book, which has all my America stamps in it that we've been focusing on here. And I want to show you now the stamps that are in it. So we can start with some butterflies. Hopefully you aren't scared of butterflies. And people might be saying, who's scared of butterflies? My son doesn't like butterflies for whatever reason. Maybe going to a place called Butterfly World and having them land on you as a small child may have had some effect on that. But you can see some early Suriname stamps and some that are a little bit more recent. And I've only just acquired most of these within the last couple months because at the stamp show that I was going to, I sat down with one of the vendors and he happened to have a good selection of stamps from Suriname, which I was quite surprised with. So I did my due diligence and grabbed as many as I could. Different ones, of course. I wouldn't grab duplicates. And you can see the influence from the Netherlands here. I really like that one there. That's a really nice classical stamp. And that is all we have for Suriname. I wanted to make this particular Thursday episode just a little bit different than I have the rest. We focused a lot about the history of the country, and I did do that in overview. And if you want to go into more detail, there are lots more details out there to learn. But we touch on a lot of the countries around it, and they have overlapping history. But when it came to the Dutch colonialization, we haven't really touched much on that. So I wanted to do a broader version of it. Hopefully you like that. We will get into it as we research other countries around the way. And I didn't want to spend too much on it because at one point we probably will be in the Netherlands looking at the history of the Netherlands and their stamps. So we'll get back into that one day too. But for today, Suriname is what we touched on. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And hopefully you'll tune in again. Have a magical week. What, Polo? You say like, subscribe, share, and tell all your friends?
Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy?
Bye. Tomorrow I'm going to show you the mail that has arrived all this week, but we're also approaching the end of the month, which means those of you that wanted to join the Unicorn Gang, hopefully your application arrives by tomorrow or is already in my possession because we will be convening as a Unicorn Gang to pick the next 4 members. So that's coming up. Also, Stamp of the Month. We are at the end of the month. So on Sunday, we will be drawing to see who is the winner of all those nice automobile postage stamps. That is coming up this weekend as well as we wrap up another month. Hard to believe, but November is almost done.